Hey guys, it's Nicole. Welcome back to another video. So I've taken a little bit of time off filming. This is actually going to be the first video I filmed in maybe 2.5 weeks. I do have a vlog that was like filmed throughout March that will be going up before this video, around the time I'm filming this video. But yeah, it's been a little while and I've actually really missed being in front of the camera and talking about books and to you guys. So I'm really excited for today's wrap up. I will be talking about all the books I read in March, and as always, I will have a list of all the books in this video so you can click on the timestamp for whatever book you want to hear about if you don't want to hear about every single book in this video. And of course I will also have links to the vlogs if any of the books were featured in vlogs. Most of these were. I think we should start with what has become my new obsession. And if you followed me with my videos on Goodreads, on Twitter, you would know that my new obsession is of course Robin Hobb. I actually managed to read all these three books of hers in March, and I didn't plan to. It just kind of worked out that way. I wanted to originally just read The Mad Ship and I read this so quickly and I was just so obsessed that I was like, okay, well, I'm going to read Ship of Destiny. And I did read that. I read this book I think in like a day and a half. It was ridiculously fast. And then I had to read the full Errand. So the Robin Hobb marathon well and truly happened in March for me. So these two books, The Mad Ship and Ship of Destiny, are part of the Live Ship Trader trilogy. Book 2, book 3, if you're not familiar with the trilogy. This trilogy is set in another part of the world than what the first 3 books are set in. And in this part of the world we follow pirates, we follow traders, we follow people who kind of work on ships and use ships for a living. The main focus of these books is the Vestret family, and they are this family who have this live ship. Live ships in this world are these magical ships that some people from other parts of the world don't even believe they exist, because the figurehead of the ship comes to life, and I loved them. Like, there were so many ships that we got to know, or I guess it was 3 main ships that we got to know, and they're all their own characters, and they were like all my favorite characters. They're so good. But they have a brain, a soul of their own. These ships are able to help navigate the crew. They are able to fight off like any serpents or any like danger that might come their way. So they have like a lot of uses, and they're very powerful, and there's a lot of mystery behind them and the magic in them. And what I loved about these 2 books was we really got to explore that and the context of the magic and the live ships, and also what it means for the magic that involves the whole world, because the magic kind of all links each trilogy. That's what I would say is really the driving force in each book that I've read so far. I've really seen how the magic is further explained and further explored and further developed, and I think that's just Robin Hobb's talent to constantly evolve this magic in new ways and shapes and forms. I'm just really blown away by it. I love the characters. Oh my god, the characters in here. Some of the best character development, if not the best I have ever seen. It's really incredible. There isn't really an overarching plot to the story. It's these characters' conflicts and their goals and their struggles that is really what makes up the plot of this book and the story itself. And I just loved it. I loved them so much. I gave both of these books 4 stars. I had a couple of, not issues, but things that I just was like, did we really have to go there? There's quite a bit of sexual assault in both these books. There is on-page and off-page rape, so huge trigger warnings for that. Something I've also noticed about what Robin Hobb does that doesn't sit with me that nicely is a lot of the women in here, like the young girls actually I should say, they're not even women. The young girls all have like relationships with much older men, and it just makes me uncomfortable because I've seen it happen multiple times throughout her series. If you're reading this series, or you've read this series, like stuff that happens with Malta. While I really liked Malta, like in this book, I didn't like her in book 1. I really enjoyed her character development over the books, and I think it was definitely good that we got to see her like strength and how smart she is. We got a lot more depth to her character in these books. There was definitely like a lot of her aging up when she was still like 14. I think by the end of the series she's 14. I think we meet her when she was like 12, so she's still very, very young, but she definitely reads as like at least 17. And in the other series as well, I found that happens, so just kind of a heads up with that. It just does make me a little bit uncomfortable. It's not something I'm trying to critique, but it's just something I wanted to make note of. Other than that, I definitely loved these books so much. I flew through them so quickly. Robin Hobb at this point has definitely become a comfort author for me. The way she tells her stories with her writing is just stunning, and I also just adore her characters. They also bring me so much comfort. So yeah, comfort all around. I read both of these for my War Games reading vlog, so if you want to hear more thoughts, go to that vlog, because it ended up being just a Robin Hobb marathon in the end. And I also did read in that vlog Fool's Errand, which is the first book in the next trilogy, which is the third trilogy in the Realm of the Outerlings, and technically I think book 8 or book 7 in the series. There's too many of them, I can't keep count. But this book returns to the world of the Farseer, so where the original trilogy is set, and it's set about 16 years after the events of book 1. So the main thing I didn't like about this book, I still gave it 4 stars, so I didn't like hate anything, but there was definitely so much recapping that was happening in the first half of the book of what had happened in the first trilogy of this world. And then there was also a lot of like catching up to be done with these characters, and we were sort of filled in with what these characters had been doing with their lives since we'd last seen them. Because I've read these books so close together, it was quite repetitive to me personally, and I found that the plot of the book that this book had for itself didn't really start until halfway through the book, which did make the start of this book, like the first half, a little bit of a slog to get through. But look, like I said, it's a comforting series, it's a comforting book, these characters are super comforting. I really can't say anything about this book. I know a lot of people usually tell you like who this follows and maybe a little bit more. I don't want to say anything just in case someone out there watching has not heard anything about this book and doesn't know who it follows and stuff, because I want to avoid spoilers. I hate spoilers and I'm not going to spoil you, so I'm going to keep my thoughts on this really brief. And the only other thing I will say about this is character work, character development from Robin Hobb continues to be top tier in this book, and I just think also the way she continues to expand the world and the magic is incredible. And I'm really loving how she connects the two series. Like, I think the two series are definitely most connected by magic, and if you do read the books out of order, maybe you'll miss things about the magic and you'll also be spoiled for things. But there are definitely like Easter eggs and like characters that pop up in each series, which just makes it fun. 4 stars for this. It's Robin Hobb. I adored it. I really want to quickly talk about this next book because I didn't love it, and that is We Need to Talk About Kevin. I gave this 1 star. Like I said, I did not love it. So I read this book for my TBR completion project vlog. It's in the 9th video in that series. But I reacted to my first TBR ever on BookTube because in March it was my 2-year anniversary. So I wanted to do like a special like anniversary video, and I thought it'd be cute to react to my March TBR from 2019, which was the 2nd video on my channel. It's privated. A lot of my early videos are privated for good reason. This is a book I've been meaning to read for a long time, like even earlier than 2 years. I did get this originally in a charity shop. I used to get most of my books from charity shops, and I'd just go around and pick up whatever was interesting, so this didn't cost me much, and thank God, because it's not worth my money, or a lot of money. This book follows a mother of a school shooter, and it's been about 1 or 2 years since the shooting happened at the beginning of this book. So you know the shootings happened, but you don't know anything else. Like, you don't really know what happened to the son, you don't really know what happened to the rest of the family. And so this mother, Eva, is telling her story in a series of letters that she's writing to her husband. It starts off her talking about their relationship before they even had kids, and it was just the 2 of them. And then it talks about how it was like for them to start a family and sort of what she gave up. I did really like how this book touched on societal pressure on women to become mothers and to start families. Eva was someone who had her own career, who had her own life, and she didn't want to start a family. She didn't want kids. She was very happy and content. And I did sort of like how it also touched upon like how it's seen as selfish for women to not want kids. There were some aspects of that discussion and conversation I didn't fully agree with, but overall I really did like that. But that was kind of it for what I liked about this book. Everything else I did not like. I found there to be quite a few problematic elements. There was like racism that in here, there was homophobia in here, sexism that wasn't questioned. Like I said, like the societal pressure on women to be mothers, that was definitely like questioned and kind of debated, but there were definitely other aspects that weren't. And there was just a lot of privilege that made this book really difficult to read, because it was kind of written in this way where you're seeing Eva and this sort of aftermath of what her son, like a life that her son has given her, a son that she didn't want, and she's now an outcast in her town, and everyone sort of knows her as this mother of a school shooter, and she's kind of like villainized. And you know, one of the first scenes is her coming home at night and her describing her finding her house like graffitied. I can't remember what it says, but you know, something gruesome about her being a mother of a shooter or a murderer. She really victimizes herself, but it was really hard to feel any sympathy with her because she was so almost narcissistic. I don't even know how to fully describe her, but from the time Kevin's born, she tells her husband in these letters, which she never told him while he was alive, but he kind of knew that she was convinced he was evil, like she was convinced he was the devil and he was out to get her when he was a baby. And it just didn't make any sense to me. The writing in here is so pretentious and overdone, and that also flowed into the dialogue and made it very unrealistic. And that whole tone of the story and like the way the writing sort of contributed to the tone of the story was so off-putting to me, because it kind of felt like at times this entire situation was sort of being romanticized, and sort of school shootings, or this school shooting was being romanticized. I don't know, it was just a very jarring and off-putting and unpleasant story to read. I just did not have fun reading this. I don't know what else I can say about this. It was just a very odd book that I read. Okay, in that same TBR completion project vlog, I also read 12 Kings, which I noticed after filming that vlog, Robin Hobb has blurbed it, and she says a breathtaking ride, and that's kind of vague, but I'm guessing that's supposed to mean she enjoyed it, and I didn't, so that's sad. One of my favorite authors blurbing this book I just did not like. My main thing with this book was nothing really happened. We have two timelines. In our main present day timeline, we are following this girl called Seda, I believe you pronounce her name as, and she's like this gladiator, pit fighter woman, but you never really see her doing any fighting. Like, you're introduced to her doing this fighting in the pits, and it was really cool and exciting, but then you really never see her do it again. It's just kind of mentioned in passing. Her main story is she is trying to uncover the secrets surrounding her mother. Her mother died when she was a kid, and her mother was what she believed to be an assassin, and her mother had some sort of connection to the leaders or the rulers of this world, the 12 Kings. What I didn't like about this was Shada in the past and Shada in the present are both trying to uncover the secrets behind her mother. So we kind of had like that one main plot that we're carrying through two different timelines, and there was no interest for me because that just wasn't really driving the story. Like, there wasn't enough going on, and it just felt like two stories that were the same. Like, there was just no point. I've mentioned this before, but sometimes two timelines don't work for me, and this is an example of when it didn't work for me, but I also think it was poorly done. There wasn't really much else that happened in the story at all. Series is 6 books long, and there was nowhere near enough setup of story or world building of anything that I could see to carry this story and the characters throughout another 6 books. I was just underwhelmed with this. I wanted so much more from this, and unfortunately I didn't get it, and this was a 2-star read. Oh, and the other thing I will mention that I found off-putting about this book was it was very, very clear that Shada was written with like a male gaze. Literally from the beginning you could tell that this young female protagonist was written by a male, and basically every other character in the story is a male. I mean, apart from her mother, but her mother does die quite quickly, if you know that, because you go in the book knowing that, but she does die quite quickly in the story. And then every other character is a male. Pretty much all of them have a crush on Shada, or are in love with her, or sexually desire her, and it was just like a very redundant story with the two timelines and just the same sort of character interaction stuff going on. Yeah, so yeah, unfortunately this wasn't for me. I don't plan to continue the series. Okay, let's talk about an audiobook I listened to that I had such a fun time listening to, and that is Amari and the Night Brothers. This is a middle grade book that you've probably seen around because everyone's talking about it, but it is so fun and it is so cute. We follow Amari, who ends up at this like magical camp. It really gave me like boarding school vibes, like magic boarding school vibes, but like it was a camp. So at the start of the book, what happens is her brother's been missing for a while, and she ends up getting invited and sort of finding her way into this camp that her brother had attended that she didn't know her brother attended. There are all sorts of different supernatural creatures, and there's like sort of tasks or top competitions that goes on throughout the book, and also like the mystery of her brother and what really happened to her brother and her brother's life that she didn't know about because she didn't know about this camp and his sort of magic side of things. I loved so many things about this. It was just like such a fun, delightful story. Amari was such a wonderful character to follow. I thought the plot was so well done and the book was so well written. Like, I'm kind of surprised this is a debut. It was just so well structured and it did a really good job of keeping you engrossed in the story from the beginning to end. I also liked that this book touched on racism and class and sort of those heavier topics, but in a lighter way. You know, we are introduced to Amari and she is the scholarship girl at her human school and sort of how she's treated because of that. And then Amari constantly is someone who finds herself in these different environments where she's an outcast for different reasons in each environment. And I just really loved how that kind of showed her character and her strength and her like resilience, and just like how she was able to like stay true to herself even though like people would put her down for a reason. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I highly recommend it. There's a reason everyone's talking about it, because it is a middle grade. You have to read if you're into middle grades. Okay, this next book I'm only going to talk about briefly, and that is A Court of Silver Flames, because I did do an entire dedicated reading vlog to this that has spoilers. So if you have read this book and you would like to know my spoilery thoughts on it, I will have the video linked, of course. I gave this book ultimately 2 stars. This is the fourth book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, and we do follow a different character in this. We follow the sister, the older sister of the main character from the original trilogy, Nesta. I really enjoyed Nesta in the original trilogy. I mean, I know she's not the greatest character, she's very far from it, but I really liked her. But when I finished this book, I kind of just felt, I don't know, meh about her. I didn't like love her, I didn't hate her, I just kind of felt a bit indifferent. I think I was just a bit like exhausted after I finished this book. This is very romance heavy, and from what I can tell from people who have read this, if you read this for the romance, you will love this book. But if you are someone who wants more fantasy and more other elements to the story, I don't think you would love this as much, because that's kind of where I fell with the story. I really wanted more of Nessa's powers, more of her training her powers, more of her using her powers, sort of more from the world. I wanted us to see more plot, especially since this is like the first book in like the sequel series. Like technically, if you're thinking like this is supposed to start a new storyline, and we didn't really get that or much sense of direction for where this series would go. There was really no world building, and maybe it's like a little bit wrong of me to have expected that from Sarah J. Maas, but like the thing is, this book is marketed as a fantasy book. So like what else am I meant to expect if it's marketed as that? It should be marketed as romance. So I don't know, I had mixed feelings on this, to be honest, and I think I will continue on with the series. They're such easy, quick reads, and I'm not going to lie, just the fact that everyone else reads them, I want to know what they're talking about. I think the main reason this really didn't work for me was because it was just about the romance, and it just felt like the same thing was happening over and over again throughout the entire book, which is like over 700 pages, and that just made the whole thing feel a little bit pointless to me, so I gave it 2 stars. But yeah, check out my reading vlog if you want to hear more thoughts, because I definitely go way more into it there. And I also read Realm of Ash. This is the sequel to Empire of Sand, but it is a companion sequel, so we follow a different main character in this. We are following the younger sister to the main character of Empire of Sand, but in this she is 21 years old, whereas in Empire of Sand she was about 9, so there's about 10 years difference between the 2 books. And I loved this because we had a really good look at the women of this time and the widows of this time. I think that's what I really love about what Tasha Suri does, is she tends to have this female central characters, and we see all these different women in this time and sort of how they're living. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. So we're following Awa at the very beginning, and she's being taken to this like temple of sorts of widows, and that is where she's supposed to be living out the rest of her life, because now that her husband's dead, she doesn't have any other importance. Her time at that place is very short-lived, and then she's taken due to unforeseen circumstances, I guess, to the palace where like the king lives, and she's going to sort of help in the shadows, and it's sort of about that and her exploring the magic in this world and her connection to it, as well as how it could help the Empire. And she's also sort of learning more about the people connected to the magic and all sorts of things. I really enjoyed most of this book. I will say the pacing wasn't the greatest. Like, you're kind of thrown into the story, which I enjoyed at the time because I was ready to just pick this book up. I was really itching to read this since I finished Empire Sand, but I just hadn't had the time. So I was ready to be thrown in. And then the middle section of the book was quite slow. I think the middle section was my favorite because that was when a lot of political intrigue was happening and a lot of the magic expanding and exploring and giving context to the magic was happening. And then the last like third, I didn't love as much. There was a lot of things that happened, like action wise and plot wise, and I guess event wise as well, and that had to be wrapped up so quickly because it all happened bang bang bang, and then we only had so many pages to wrap the whole story up, and it just felt very rushed. The other thing is, this is like a fantasy romance, and it took so long for the characters to get together, which is sort of happened in Empire Sand as well. Like, they're both slow burn stories, and I really loved how Empire Sand was done. I thought it was perfection, but in here it was almost too slow burn. Like, it took so long for the characters to get together that we hardly actually got to see them together in the end, which was kind of disappointing. Like, I would have loved to see more of their relationship play out, but still overall love Tasha Shuri's writing and her character. I did love some of the characters in this, but like Empire Sand, I loved like all of the characters, which is why I hesitate. But it definitely makes me so excited for her new release that's coming out in June. It's definitely still one of my most anticipated releases. I can't wait to see what I think of it. And in the end, I gave this book like 4 stars. It might be a 3.75. I'm not too sure. Like, I had a really great time reading the beginning of this. I was just like disappointed by the end. But my expectations were really high because of Empire Sand. So I don't know. The last book I am only going to quickly talk about because I've started rereading it, so it's going to be in a future wrap up, and I kind of don't know how to talk about this book as well, so I kind of want to wait until that future wrap up where hopefully I will have a better idea of how to talk about this book, that I could explain and talk to you about it better. But that is Gideon the Ninth. I still have the dust jacket off. But this book I read because it was the book club pick for February for the Sorcery and Stardust book club, which is my friend's Katie's book club. She's just started running it. February was the first month actually, and I was the first co-host for the first live show, which was exciting, and Gideon was of course the first book. So I'll have a link to the live show in case you do want to hear thoughts and spoilery thoughts, then you can hear them. This is a book that plot-wise is really confusing, and I don't know how to explain to you. Basically, we have like these necromancers. You know what? I'll give you buzzwords. So it's sapphic, there's necromancers, there's like a competition, and yeah. A lot of people call us like necromancers in space. I honestly forgot half the time we were in space. Like, it didn't really give me a whole lot of space vibes. I think most of the sci-fi vibes I got were from some of the technology that was mentioned, but even then half the time it would kind of go over my head in terms of visuals. We're following Gideon, who's grown up in this 9th house, and she's trying to escape, and you don't really know much more than that. Why is explaining this book so hard? She's like a bodyguard, warrior sort of character. She's sort of trained physically a lot of her life, and she's working with the heir of the house, but she's working with them reluctantly. There's a very interesting relationship between the two. This book was confusing. As you can tell, like, I'm still confused. But it was confusing in a sense that it made me just want to read it more. And that just made the story very, very engrossing. Also, the writing was so interesting. It was like very lyrical, lush writing, but at the same time it was quite vulgar. And just that combination was so well done. I think that the style of this book is very, very unique in terms of how it's told, in the story itself, and just the world. And I'm going to leave my thoughts there because I'm sounding like a blabbering idiot right now because I don't know what to say, and I'm trying to come up with what to say. And I will have this in a future wrap up because, like I said, I've started rereading it. I'm not far into it though, and then hopefully I can make more sense out of what to say. And yeah, that was my March wrap up. A pretty good reading month overall since most of my books were 4-star reads, so I'm pretty happy with that. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you're enjoying whatever you're currently reading, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!